welcome to A Mother's Pain, the untold story of violence, brought on by the Oklahoma Conference of Churches. I am Michael Eric Owens. I am the program coordinator. And with us this evening, we have Sarah Burdine as well as Tina Adams. And I want to first of all thank them so much for their willingness to come and tell their stories. And we want to learn, grow, be impacted by these stories. So I'm just going to start right in and ask Sarah if she could start with her story.
Absolutely. First of all, thank you so much for having me this evening. I appreciate the opportunity to talk about my son, Heir. Heir was my firstborn. He was 23 years old when, tragically, he was shot and killed on August 25th, 2012. Heir had gone out down to Bricktown with some friends that Friday evening, and he went from Bricktown to an after party at the urging of the friends that he drove that evening. From what we know, and this is 8 years after the fact, from what we know, a fight broke out between some young ladies at the club. They took the fight out to the parking lot, and the police came by and said, take the fight back inside or I'll shut the club down. The fight continued inside. The bouncer at this sports bar, their grand opening evening, he shot around into the ceiling thinking it would calm everybody down, and instead it just was mass hysteria at that point. People ran out the front door, the back door. They dove under pool tables. Heir made it out to his car, and there was shooting going on in the parking lot. From what we know, Heir called one of his friends that he had driven that evening, and he told his friend, come outside, they're shooting. And he told them that he would be pulling up to the front door. And as Heir was approaching the front door of this sports bar, his car was shot at several times, and then someone shot through the passenger window and hit my son in his carotid artery in his right side. The bullet exited through Heir's left shoulder and lodged into the back door of his car. His car continued through the parking lot of this club, through an intersection, and then crashed in a ditch. My son was the only one that was killed that evening. The law enforcement officers collected almost 100 shell casings from that scene that evening. There were many shooters. They think probably half a dozen shooters out there based on the shell casing retrieval. Heir was killed 4 months before his only child was born, my precious granddaughter, Sierra. And Heir's death has just been devastating to our family. It is almost difficult to put into words what his homicide has done to the family. First of all, the violence of it, of course, not knowing, not being prepared for something. This was like an ongoing illness that we were preparing for, just the suddenness of it, the violence of it. His young age, he was 23 when he was killed. The fact that we now have a child out there that never got to meet her dad and is being raised only by her mother because another person was the victim of gun violence here in this city. The frustration, my son's case is not solved. It's a cold case. There's been a suspect all along, but unfortunately there's been no arrest, no justice for us thus far. So to put into words is so difficult. However, I'm so pleased any opportunity I have to talk about Heir and to let the community know what a wonderful son he was, what a great dad he would have been, what a wonderful brother he was to his siblings. And then just to kind of remind them, I think a lot of times we don't remember. There are so many unsolved crimes, unsolved homicides in our community, in our county, in our state. We would be horrified. And I think we all need to know this and have this be a regular conversation, that there are murderers walking around amongst us. So I'm here this evening to absolutely answer any questions, to impart what I've gone through over the past 8 years, to offer suggestions that I would love to see enacted. and to really just be an open book for my struggle and my family's struggle and pain during these last 8 years since Sierra's homicide.
You know, I must confess that I knew your son, and and I considered him to be a son to me. He worked for me. We were very close, and I was, you know, devastated, and my heart goes out to you. And we have had conversations about this. And can you share just how do you deal with the injustice, not knowing day to day that the person is still free and out there and can be a danger?
Michael, that's one of the most frustrating things that I've experienced is knowing that there's been a suspect all along. The night Sierra was killed, there were 200 witnesses at the scene, and none have come forward to help with the investigation. None have cooperated with law enforcement. So it's beyond frustrating. And honestly, it can take a toll. My first year after Sierra was killed, it was a year full of, I can't believe this is happening. Just the whole shock of it. The second year was pure anger, just angry that here I am a year later and there's not been an arrest. I felt like we were no closer than the day it happened. And just the toll it takes on the family, that you're always wondering, will today be the day? Will this week be the week? Will this month, this year, even at this point, will this be the year that we get justice? In my situation, since we do have a suspect, he has been named by police. That's even more difficult for me, quite frankly, because I keep up with what's happening with him. I know that he's been arrested on other crimes. I know he's been in prison for other crimes. I know he's, going out and doing bad things, and he still has remained hands off as far as Sierra's death. And I know some of his family members. That's extremely difficult to know some of his family members and to know that they celebrate birthdays and Christmas and every holiday with him. And I go to the cemetery or to the site of my son's homicide when I want to be close to Sierra on those occasions. It's very, very frustrating. And if it's not dealt with accordingly and appropriately, and that's something that, Tina and I both have dealt with for the last several years, it can take a physical toll. It takes a toll on, for, of course, family dynamics and family relationships, but the physical toll it can take on you is absolutely devastating. You have to find a way to kind of harness this and reach out in other ways so it won't consume. I think about Sierra every day. There's not a day that goes by that I don't think about my son. I cannot be consumed with the rage or the injustice every day and be a productive mom and grandmother that I need to be.
And I know that you, every year on the anniversary of his death, you do something. How do you remember that day or commemorate that day?
Oh goodness. Well, this year was different. Usually we go out to the scene. I feel a closeness to Sierra out there since that's the last place he was alive, more so than I do at the cemetery. At the cemetery, quite frankly, it just crushes me. And Sierra's buried next to my husband, so that's equally devastating every time I go out there. So the scene of we've kind of had a utility pole that's been a makeshift memorial for Sierra, and that, as difficult as it is, it brings me some level of closeness to him. That I think, this is where he took his last breath. And I know there are several people. I'm always astonished when I go out there and other people have left things at the site, whether it's flowers or, a handwritten card or, a little statue or a light, whatever somebody brings. I'm always just pleasantly surprised that people remember and honor him that way. This year we chose not to do anything with COVID. And we just remembered him personally, as a family. And I went out there a few days beforehand just to honor him myself. And I don't know. It's difficult. There's no way that I feel is ever appropriate enough. What should I do? And the same with his birthday. Sierra would be turning 32 this month on the 10th of October, and he died at 23. And it's I can't help but think, what would my 32-year-old son be like today? What would my 32-year-old son be like as a father, as the big brother to adult siblings now? So it's difficult, definitely in difficult times on his anniversary and on his birthday to remember him. But again, this connection is oddly, it's just weird that I do have that connection out there. I feel kind of comfortable out there, as sad as it is.
Thank you so much. And
Sure.
I want to, Tina, I want you to share your story as well.
My son, Ray, he was murdered 5 years ago on September the 26th. And I'm gonna kind of throw this in here. I'm sure you didn't know, but his son was also murdered this year on June the 23rd. So, I mean, I'm having back-to-back issues here with homicides. It is frustrating, like Sarah said. There are suspects, but in Ray's case, the people that can ID the suspect will not come forward. Also, like Sarah, we celebrate. We don't celebrate. We celebrate his birthday. We just celebrate his birthday for the first time this year at the cemetery. We had been celebrating it at the location of where the homicide took place. My son told me when he was 10 years old that if I excuse me, that if I never bought him a gift, that he always wanted a card for his birthday. So that's what we do on his birthday is we have balloons, and at the end of the balloons we all have put a little tag on it, and we wish him a happy birthday, and we release them. And we always try to have his favorite food. Like he loved donuts, he loved Gatorade, he loved honey buns. Something real quick and easy, nothing elaborate, just something fun. And we kind of talk about him and what he would be saying or doing. But this year, like I said, we went to the cemetery, and it just felt odd to me. I felt off. So I don't know if it's the cemetery or I needed to be where he was actually killed at. And as a mother, I don't care if your child when your child is away from you and something's going on, you know it. You just feel it in your soul. And after the detectives left, after they had come to my house, I had to get to the scene of the homicide. And I immediately walked the street, and I just stopped, and I said, my son was lying right here. And I know he called for me because I could feel his spirit. So a few months after that, we got an opportunity to speak with one of the witnesses that held my son in his arms while the paramedics came. And I asked him, where was my son lying when he was holding him in his arms? And he said, ma'am, he was right here. It's the same exact spot I had stood in months before. It's where my son was lying. So even in transition of your soul, your mother or your grandmother or whoever has that maternal instinct with that person knows what the last moments were like. I could feel him in that spot. Uh, it may sound weird, but that's something I hold on to. It took me a while to travel past where he was murdered at. I would go out of my way because I could still feel his soul there. It was maybe 2 years before I could travel that way. It's really hard. It's very, very hard, but it has been 5 years, and it does get easier, and I appreciate everyone that has helped me through this, but it's still difficult. It's even hard to even talk about him now. And then with his son, he was 16, murdered at high noon by another 16-year-old. So here I am again going through this, looking at and wiping up my grandson's blood because the people there are just walking through it as if his life meant nothing. Who does that? So I this year I believe I ached more for my grandson because it's so new to me. And he was the only one there not able to celebrate his dad's birthday. And maybe that's why I felt out of not quite there. Maybe that's the reason why. I'm not really sure. I just want everyone to understand that when you lose when you lose a child, you can I believe I've lost my grandparents, I lost my dad, I've lost aunts, I've lost cousins. When you lose a child, it's almost undescribable. The feeling I, I d- it's just really difficult.
Wow. Could you? I want to do something here, and then I'm going to go to Sarah. I want you to talk about Ray. What type of person? What do you remember about him?
Ray was he was funny. He was real witty. He could, you know how those people just say things in a conversation, or and it fits right there and everyone starts laughing. That was Ray. He was very mannerable. He did get into some trouble as a teenager, and every law enforcement or juvenile uh, agency that he came in contact with, they were like, "Why are you here? You don't fit the profile. You're mannerable. You're polite." I mean, he had even arresting officers when he was a juvenile spoke to the judge so that he could to help him out. If you were going down the street and your car is in the middle of the intersection, Ray would get out to help you get out of the street. If you He had so many friends that he would bring home, well, for his grandmother, my mother, to feed. That's just who he was. He was a kind person, loving, would do anything for you, but most of all, he was funny. He would have you cracking up. And what I loved about him is that he got interested in cooking. So for 2 or 3 years before his death, he would always fry the turkey. I had fried turkey once years ago, and I didn't like it. It probably was the way it was prepared. But once I saw him take his time and season it and wrap it up and put it in the cold freezer. I mean, cold. Oh shoot, what's that thing? You carry your cold stuff in. I can't even think of it now. He put it in there, and he'd come back and he'd turn it over and just got so into it. And once, like I said, he was murdered in September. So I'm coming upon Thanksgiving. I could not cook the Thanksgiving dinner that year. I I, I don't. I tried to finish it. I don't believe I did. I just can't remember. But for some reason, it could just nothing went right. So that's the kind of person Ray was. Even now, today, if I hear someone say, Miss Adams, I know it was one of Ray's friends. It's either someone he went to school with or someone he brought home. That's what that's who he was.
Thank you so much for saying all of that. And Sarah, could you just share a little bit about, who was Heir?
Absolutely. I feel like Tina was describing Seer just now. Seer was so much like Ray. He was, I'm not even going to say Seer was funny. He was goofy. I mean, Michael, he was so incredibly goofy. He would do anything. Sometimes, my mom has this expression, playing for an audience of one. If it just cracked Seer up, it was good enough. But he usually had us absolutely in stitches. He was so goofy. And he would do anything to make us laugh. He had several sayings. He would make up names for everybody in the family. They didn't have anything to do with our regular names, but we have nicknames to this day that Seer made up. And the other day, my daughter and I were talking. He said, "Where do these come from? They don't even fit in." How did he come up with these? And it was just Seer to come up with something just so off the wall. Seer, I like to say that he was a chameleon, a social chameleon. He could talk to anybody, any age, any ethnicity, any socioeconomic, background. He could talk to anybody, and he would just move the conversation to fit in with whoever he was speaking with. Seer was also, he was such a protector. After my husband died, Seer took over the self-imposed role of being the family protector. He was so protective of me. He was super protective of his siblings. He has a younger brother and sister, Cameron and Lauren, and then a stepsister the same age as him. And he was so very protective. And I remember Seer, pretty much every time I talk to him, I've always been the type that if I see something going on, I'm going to go get in the middle of it and try and break it up, or, call the police, whatever. It's very hard for me to walk by and say, hey, it's not me in my household. I would always get involved. And Seer hated that. He was worried about my safety. He said, Mom, that's great to be active. It's great that you care, but people are crazy these days. I don't want you and I remember this one time at a park by your house, there were some teenagers fighting, and I came home and told him about it. And he said, let me guess, you got out of the car, you tried to talk to them. And I'm like, I sure did. Yeah, you know me. Pardon me. And he said, Mom, the last thing I want is for you to get shot and killed. And literally a few months later, my son was, shot and killed leaving. I did want to, if I could, when I was describing what happened to Seer, I said that he had gone down to Bricktown that night. That is not where he was killed. He left Bricktown, and he did go to a sports bar out in Spencer and was killed there. So I just wanted to clarify that. It made I just thought maybe they thought he was killed in Bricktown, but he was not. But he was such a likable young man. I really, really miss what this community missed out on with his death. The as I said earlier, the 32-year-old that he would be, and what he would have contributed, and just his mind. He was such an intelligent young man. And this is so funny, Michael, going back to elementary school through his senior year of high school at Classen, every parent-teacher conference involved, he will not be quiet. He talks all the time. He's a great student. He just will not be quiet. He's a class clown. He's a laugh is more important. Trying to get his little buddies to laugh is way more important than studying. And I would just say, I'll talk to him about it. And he never changed. He never learned that, just sometimes. But goodness, he was just a joy of a son. He really was. And gosh, I miss him tremendously. I can hear so many of the things that he said routinely to me. And I just replay those over and over again with him.
I remember he would come in my office and he would just want to talk about life. And he was tremendously introspective of where he was at and what he wanted to do with his life. And we spent hours just talking about things. And I told him, I said, because I know he was a great basketball player. And I told him he had a little height on me, but the old man was going to try to take him out there and do something with him. And he would just laugh.
Yeah, he came home and told me that and laughed too. He's like, he really thinks he can do something. And I remember that. Oh,
Indeed,
goodness.
indeed. Let's talk a little bit about community violence in silence. I don't know what it is about minority communities in this. I do know the correlation with, the non-trusting of police officers. I get that. But when violence happens in our community, what do you say to someone that knows something and just refuses to say anything? Sarah, if you would go first, and then Tina.
I wish I had the answer to that. This has been a frustration for mine. I've never subscribed to the no snitch mentality. I don't believe in that. I don't agree with that. And that's all well and good until it hits your household. I do understand, however, I respect and understand the mistrust with law enforcement for so many communities. I do understand that. I just think there's zero honor in knowing that somebody's a killer and not coming forward, whether that's somebody that you went to school with, that you're in a gang with, that is one of your family members, that that they did it. There's no honor in that. And as I take it to the level of being a Christian, that there's no way as a Christian that I could know something and not tell, whether it's my mistrust of the police or not. If I didn't trust them alone, I would find somebody, some organization, some individual to help me get this message to law enforcement. And I go back to this, the Crime Stoppers is there for a reason. It's an anonymous call. They don't call you back and say, hey, did you just hang up on me? Hey, did you just call and say this? It is an anonymous program there for a reason. And it is for people that are worried about retribution. If they snitch. I 8 years into this, I'm so frustrated with that mentality, though. I have zero patience for it. None. I don't know the answer to that other than just telling people we've got to do better. We've got to do better. And I have made myself very available since Year's death. If you want to come to me, email me, text me, leave an anonymous note, call me *67 and tell me something, I'll be the link to law enforcement. I'll help people, and not only on Sierra's case, but on anybody's case. I am more than happy to bridge the gap between somebody, an informant, and law enforcement. It's that critical. And Tina and I, the dozens, if not hundreds of families that we know that we have come into contact with over the past 5 years for Tina and 8 years for me, we are impacted. I mean, there are so many people that are still waiting for justice. It's a national epidemic. Well, certainly it is here in Oklahoma City, Oklahoma County, Oklahoma, but it is a national epidemic that we have got to get a hold of. And I think, therein lies the church's stand in this, that they can also, be a safe refuge for people to say, hey, come tell us, kind of like a confessional, write it on a piece of paper, something. And we will be that. We will be the person that gets this information to law enforcement. We as a church will help out. But Michael, I absolutely am so frustrated with that mentality. It just really gets me going.
And Tina, what are your thoughts?
There is a lot of mistrust in the Black community. I can't speak on any other community, but there is mistrust in the Black community, and there is this unwritten law about snitching. But what I tell people is this: you don't have to have the answer to who may, who or what. You just need a little information, because believe me, the police is not going to tell you what they know. They're not going to even tell the family what they know or what they don't know. It's a puzzle. And you may have that one piece to this puzzle that will solve it, that will put it all together. It could be that I seen a red car go by. Well, with the license plate, well, maybe it had a J and a W on it. Well, and I saw a 6. They may already know the other letters and numbers to that vehicle. You don't know that. Don't try to figure it out. Whatever you have, please share it. Please share it. And like Sarah said, which I never thought of, the churches could be that bridge, sort of like a confession. You could call Crime Stoppers, or you could tell someone just enough information that they may tell someone else. It is, and I know that the police investigates things, because let me give you an example. There was some talk on my son's case, and I went on Facebook and I found some information out, and this information all matched exactly about what was being said in the streets. So I told the police, and this particular person's page had a nickname on it. And I told the detectives about it, gave them the Facebook page and everything. And as soon as they talked to this person, do you know that person stopped using that nickname on his Facebook page? Stop using it. That person has his real name on there, because his profile and the information he was talking about was fitting the information on the streets that I was hearing from various people. So it's not that the police aren't going to do anything, because in that case, I just gave them the Facebook page and the name, and they looked it up, they checked it out, and they was like, yeah, we heard that too, we got that in our notes, so on and so forth. And I promise you, as soon as that detective called me and told me that he talked to that person, I went back to the page, and that person is no longer using that street name. That person is using his real name, because he doesn't want anyone to think that he had anything to do with Ray's murder. So if you don't think your detectives do anything or listen to what's being said, if you give them enough information that fits something they may already know, they're going to look into it.
And we mentioned the church, and so I really want to dive deep into. We have a lot of churches in Oklahoma City, a lot. We have a lot in the Northeast community, and over 100 some churches. What role, beginning with you, Tina, do you see the church playing, not just with violence in the community, but you mentioned earlier being a safe haven for conversation, but what role do you see the church playing? And is the church living up to that role?
And I agree, there are lots of churches on every corner and every side corner and upside down corner on the northeast side of Oklahoma City. What I found in my case is that there's no help or assistance for families who are grieving from the loss of a child to homicide. There just was nothing there. I mean, after the funeral or wherever you hold your services at, after that, the black churches, and I'm gonna say black churches, yeah, I'm gonna put that out there, are not involved. Uh, I had to, there is an organization that helps families through a grieving process. It's a 13-week program. There was not a black church on that list. So my daughter and I had to go to a church where everyone in there, besides one other lady, was white. We were the only, well, it actually was four. We were the only four Black people, moms in there, that found that program to work. It was so good that we took it another 13 weeks, and it was free. And they give you tools and other, just tools to help you through the grieving process. It 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 really helped. It really helped. But there was not a Black church on the northeast side of Oklahoma City that was on that list. That list came from the Oklahoma Oklahoma Police Department, their family advocate division. They gave me that list. There was not a Black church on there. That's where the churches on the northeast side can help. And I understand I'm not saying they don't help, but that is one way that they can help, is have some type of grief program for families. Just today on the news with a 12-year-old, my heart goes out to any mother that has lost a child to violence.
We might have lost Tina. Hopefully, we will get her back. I mean, one thing in her mentioning that having a grief program, a lot of times, if you're not a member of a church, then you're not able to tap into those resources. Sarah, you want to talk a little bit about what you think the role of the church should be?
Absolutely. My thinking is this has changed a lot over the last 8 years. I do not think that the only role of the church should be for hosting the funeral. We knew the family used to be members, they are members, we'll host the funeral here, and then that stops. And I think that was very common. Again, I think that the church should be intimately involved in community violence outreach projects. I think that they could be involved in, the gun buyback program, or trade in your guns. Again, a safe haven. Come, we will keep everything anonymous. This is a safe place for you to come. I think my personal opinion is any church that closes a gate and locks the community out at 5:00 is not the church that you need to go to. Churches need to be responsive and open to their members, to the community at large, at all times. And if they can't be open, I'm not saying be open 24 hours, but don't make it a fortress that it seems like nobody's welcome. I think that there are many, many ways that the church should and could get involved when they partner with things like Moms Demand Action, Everytown Survivor Network. Just being a presence in the community and a safety spot in the community. I think reach out and say, it's safe to come here. The 12-year-old boy shot and killed in Midwest City yesterday. I would like to think that he could have gone to a corner church, whether it's his home church or not. He could have gone to a local church to say, I'm running away from home. I'm afraid I'm getting bullied, what have you. And I think church needs to do a much better job reaching out to the community, saying we are here, and not just to the members, to say, whether you attend every Sunday or not, these are the programs available. If we don't offer it, let us get you in contact with somebody that does, or let us, do the homework to get you into a safe spot or something like this. My home church, when Heir was killed, my pastor moved out of state, and he was wonderful, but no one picked up where he left off. And I changed churches behind that. I did not know how to connect with people that have lost a child in any manner, yet, let alone to gun violence. So I think sometimes, the church used to be a place that you could go for all sorts of resources. My dad was a Presbyterian minister. People came to him for everything: legal issues, medical issues, family issues. And what my dad couldn't answer, he connected them. And I remember that growing up. So I thought, the church, what's happened? I know with the Oklahoma Homicide Survivor Support Group, we make ourselves readily available to any church that wants to have us out to talk to their members, to talk at any sort of event, to let us know, or to let them know rather, that there's a support group for families, for parents, siblings, any family member or friends that want to attend that have lost somebody to homicide. So there are ways that we can get this information out, and it's just not happening. It's just not happening right now. So I'm wonderfully excited that this might be an opportunity to bridge some of these gaps that I feel are in the community between the families and the churches, other than, again, we hosted a funeral.
I like the way you put that. The role is more than simply hosting a funeral, and the church must play a more significant role in reaching those who are experiencing grieving from the loss of a loved one. And that's why we're having this conversation, because we believe that we can be a conduit for that. And I think what I want to do as we wind this down, I want to talk about some of the resources that you have participated in, or that you would say that's available to someone out there that has lost a child. What groups are there? What can they do? And let's. I think we have Tina back with us. Can we start off with you, Tina?
Yes. The only group that I know of is the group called Griefshare. And that's the group that my daughter and I participated in, but we had to go out of our community to connect with that group. Then the only other group is the group that Sarah is involved in, is Oklahoma Homicide Survivors Group. Those are the only two groups that I know of that connect homicide survivors. Those are the only two. There isn't, I can't think of anything after that.
Sarah?
I know a few more just because I've been in this, unfortunately, a bit longer than Tina. And again, I had younger children than Tina when Ray was killed. Calm Waters program is wonderful for siblings or even grandchildren of homicide victims, and not just homicide victims. Anyone that's suffered the death of a spouse or a parent or a sibling can attend Calm Waters. The Compassionate Friends, that's also a wonderful group. And sadly, with the Homicide Survivor Support Group and the Compassionate Friends, since COVID hit, no one's had a meeting since March, but we're still accessible on Facebook and via email. Another resource that is critically important that I'd like to mention is the Crime Victims Compensation Plan. It is imperative. I tell everybody that is a victim of a crime, any crime, to at least file the claim. In Oklahoma, it's a daunting task, quite frankly. The denial rate is incredibly huge. It is. There was a report, I believe, just a little over a year ago about the number of claims that have been denied, and an astonishing number have been African American victims. I would still suggest apply, appeal, appeal again, and appeal again. This is money that can go for funerals, burials, headstones, counseling, loss of services, crime scene cleanup. All, I mean, untold millions of dollars are in this plan for every Oklahoman that has suffered a crime and the family members of such. And I just implore everybody to file for that. I personally filed for Heir. I was denied, and I filed an appeal and was granted that. And my children and I went through counseling with this plan. It was invaluable. We also had reimbursement of partial funeral and headstone expenses for Heir. So I would definitely recommend that, and to reach out to any of the organizations that Tina and I mentioned. Sometimes, even though we can't offer resources, financial resources to help, knowing that there are other people that have walked in your shoes, that have, Tina's story with Ray is different than mine, but we are two moms that have lost our children, and there's not any other person out there in the community that understands that except for another mom. And as weird as it sounds, there is comfort in knowing that. There is comfort in me being friends with Tina to know if I'm having a bad day, all I have to do is call Tina Adams or text her and say, listen, this has been really horrible. You understand. The holidays are coming up, or it's Heir's birthday coming up, or just some days, even when you can't get it out. When you can't get it out and all you hear on the other end is somebody crying, there is somebody out there for you. It's powerful that you have those connections. And I wanted to just reiterate what Tina said, that I think it is shameful, not just, it's not right. It is shameful that the Griefshare program and some of the other resources are not available in Northeast Oklahoma City. Gun violence, or violence in general, is disproportionately hitting the Northeast community, and it has been for years. Yesterday, Oklahoma City suffered the 51st homicide of this year. 51 families have been affected just this year in Oklahoma City proper, not Midwest City, Spencer, Dale City, Moore, Norman, just in Oklahoma City. And a large number of those probably are in Northeast Oklahoma City. To have nothing there, that is absolutely shameful. I would challenge churches to offer Griefshare, to have conversations like this more frequently with the Homicide Survivor Support Group, with the Compassionate Friends, to say, what can we do? Can we host it here? Can you come out and talk? We have 5 family members at our church that have suffered a homicide. Can you come out and talk to us? It's having these conversations that is so imperative, instead of saying, it's not hit my household yet. And every family that I've personally met in this journey has said that it wasn't going to be on my block. It wasn't going to be in my part of town. It wasn't going to be down here, there, or the other. We were college educated. My son wasn't supposed to be killed. It knows no limits, sadly. And I don't want everybody's reaction to be, I'm not going to worry about it until it happens to my family. This is a community-wide problem. And it's going to take the community at large to solve this, and to get better resources, and to make things safe. It's going to take a lot of involvement with the church, with law enforcement, volunteer groups. But I'm so, I'd like to think that churches would step up and play a more integral part of not only the families that are grieving, but a safe place for people to report crimes as well.
I would like to say one thing for clarity. Griefshare is not just for homicide survivors. It's for anyone that has had a loss. There were wives in there, sisters in there, people that have lost someone to cancer. It's just about the loss. And I think my daughter and I, and maybe one other person out of maybe 20 people, we were the only ones that had lost someone to a homicide. So I don't want people to think that Griefshare is just for people that have lost someone to a homicide. It's for any type of loss, and that's something you don't get in the churches. You don't get that after funeral, after repast care from the churches. Thank you.
Well, I know that there are some compassionate churches, passionate pastors throughout the Oklahoma City area and the Northeast and beyond. And I would hope that this is a conversation that speaks to them, and that they would look at their own ministries and make a determination that this should be available. And if it is available, we need to make it known to those outside of the walls of the church. And, Sarah's been 8 years. Tina's been 5, but it's been even more recent with your grandson. I just want to applaud both of you for your courage, for your strength in continuing to live and to keep Sierra and Ray's name alive. Their life had value. They matter very deeply, not just to you most importantly, but to their siblings, to their friends. And so, as you said, we should not wait until it hits home. And so I want to thank you on behalf of the Oklahoma Conference of Churches for sharing your powerful stories. We need to hear this. This should not be hidden inside the walls of our homes. We need to hear it, be impacted by it, and then we need to react. And I know that Reverend Fleck, she could not be here, but I know she feels the same way that I do, that if we can do anything as an organization to bring churches together to make a difference, that's what we want to do. So with that said, thank you so much. And, stay safe in this COVID environment. And we look forward to continuing this conversation with you, and even seeking your wisdom on how, we as an organization can spearhead some things in this area that is so needed. So thank you so much.
Thank you for having us, Michael. It's been my pleasure. Thank you.
Thank you.
Thank you so much. We appreciate it.
Absolutely. Absolutely. Take care.
Thank you. Thank you.